Hello everyone, just waiting for a few more people to dial in. Fingers crossed that you can hear me okay. In your attendee sidebar, if you can hear me, can you just type yes so I can see that the technology is working okay? Fabulous, that looks great, thank you so much. Wonderful. Okay, so hello everyone, my name is Laura Hill, I'm Alumni Relations Officer at the University of Liverpool Management School, and I'll be hosting this webinar on voice search, its growth and impact on marketing. Before we get started and I introduce you to our speaker, Tim Butler, I'd like to go over a few items so you know how to participate in today's event. So we've taken a screenshot example of the attendee interface. You may see something that looks very similar on your own computer in the upper right corner. To view the control panel in full, you can click the small orange arrow just at the top. And once you've clicked on that, the full controls should be visible and allow you to fully participate in the webinar. You're all currently listening in using your computer's audio speaker system by default. If you prefer to join over the phone, you can select telephone in the audio pane, and then the dial-in information will be displayed. You'll have the opportunity to submit text questions to today's presenter by typing in your questions into the questions pane of the control panel. You can send in your questions at any time during the presentation. We'll collect these and address a small number of them during the Q&A session at the end of today's presentation. There'll also be 2 polls which we'll be inviting you to participate in during the session, and these will automatically appear during the session later on. The webinar will be recorded and you will receive a recording directly to your inbox within the next 2 to 3 working days. If you have missed any of our previous webinars, you can access them on the Management School website. I'm just showing you a screenshot and the URL on your screen for you now. Okay, fantastic. It looks like we've got lots of attendees coming in. Numbers looking pretty stable. Wonderful. So on to today's topic, voice search, its growth and impact on marketing. We're all familiar with typing a query into Google to find a product, a business, or an answer to a question. But many of us are now choosing to ask Google and others out loud. This trend is growing much faster than most businesses realize and fundamentally impacts on marketing. In this webinar, University of Liverpool alum Tim Butler, who graduated from Business Economics in 1994 and Director of Innovation Visual, is going to outline the explosive growth in voice search technology and explain the difference between typing and verbalizing search queries and how this will require huge changes from businesses that want to be successful. Tim's webinar will take you from the basics of voice search through to how the technology is changing digital marketing and explore how the future might shape up and how businesses can be part of the voice-controlled future. Tim started his first online business in 1999 with a fellow Liverpool alumna. Since then, he's worked in a variety of marketing and digital businesses on a huge diversity of clients, from pharmaceutical giants to one-man bands. He believes digital marketing is a means of empowering business owners and tries very hard to keep what he says as jargon-free as possible. And Tim, I'm going to hold you on to that. So bear with us 1 second whilst we hand over control to Tim. And as I say, do feel free to type questions in the sidebar as we go along. And if you are on Twitter at all, do post questions. I know that Tim is going to provide us with some Twitter handles in a few moments. Okay.
Okay, can you see my screen? Everybody.
Hi Tim, it's Laura here. I can see you. Can we just get a few of our attendees, if you're happy, just type in the search bar for us? Yeah, they can see the screen. Can you hear Tim and I nice and clearly?
Hello.
This is looking positive. Okay, fantastic. Over to you.
Okay, thank you very much, Laura. And as you mentioned, Innovation Visual Digital Marketing Agency, we actually specialise in organic and paid search marketing, so helping businesses get found. And one of the things that we've been helping our clients understand and deal with is the implications of the rise of the digital assistants and specifically voice search. So that's what the webinar is on today. There's a couple of Twitter handles up there at the moment. There's our company Innovation Visual one and the Liverpool alumni Twitter handles. And we've also got a hashtag up there, which is LiveUniWebinar. If you want to submit a question or a comment via Twitter, you can use that and we can pick that up. And we will in fact start with a bit of participation, and you can utilize that by perhaps guessing on Twitter the film that this image has come from and the year it was made, because using voice to interact with computers has been around for quite a long time, and it's something that mankind has thought about as they've utilized computers. And in fact, Google's first voice-powered search was a phone service. So you would dial a phone number, then speak your search query, and you would get the result read back to you. So it wasn't until 2012 that app-based voice search arrived on Google in a format that you'd recognize today. Siri was actually there before Google's voice search, and the Siri app was developed by a company outside of Google, and that went live as a standalone app in February 2010. And it only took Apple a mere couple of months to buy that technology in the company so that they could then integrate it, and it took them until the end of 2011 to integrate Siri fully into the iOS operating system and become the voice assistant that we know so well today. There are other digital assistants out there. Microsoft's Cortana was quite late to the party. That was only demoed in 2013. And the device that I think changed the game when it came to voice search was Amazon's Echo, which uses the Alexa digital assistant. That was announced back in November 2014. So the technology that we're using today for search is really quite new, although the concept isn't. And this is due to the way that it very much works. So thanks to those of you who might have had a guess on who or what movie this picture was from. It's actually from the original Alien movie from 1979, which shows how long ago we were imagining talking to computers, and the computer that you see in the picture was called Mother, and you could talk to it. So the technology behind voice search, it's interesting because people say that their device, their iPhone or their smartphone is enabled for voice search, but it's actually just a conduit for the information. It's the microphone and speaker are being used on your phone, because the computing power required to answer your simple question is really immense. So what held back the early technology adoption was the need to use very specific commands early on, and also you had to speak very clearly. So you couldn't use voice control if you had a very strong accent, and you also needed to know the specific syntax of the commands. So it wasn't easy to use, and it wasn't a better alternative to typing a query in. So this has been overcome by sheer computing power and the use of artificial intelligence and machine learning. So your simple request that you talk into your device, that gets sent through to the servers where the voice is translated into an encoded text format, and then it can be used as search criteria, and the results are then fed back through voice encoding before they're sent back to your handset. And that all happens, within a few seconds, which is really impressive. But it's the AI that means that the translation of your audio into text is now much more complex than just simply those words. It's including data such as your location, your previous searches that you may have made, and it's even looking for emphasis in your voice. So it's this power and complexity that has allowed computers to really understand what you're asking, which is something that we take for granted every time we have a conversation with a human being. So the voice-controlled devices that are so familiar with us, some of them are shown on the screen, and we've got a quick poll which would be really interesting if you want to just mark down any of the voice controlled devices that you've ever used, just to have a bit of a straw poll, how many of you out there have actually used one or more of these devices, and some of the others. And in terms of those that are really familiar, the first two from left to right you see on the screen, Amazon's Echo and Google Home, these are called voice-first devices. So these don't have screens, and it's purely an audio relationship that we have with these devices. Although I have to say Amazon sport that slightly because they've just brought out an Echo with a screen, but fundamentally these are voice-first devices. Then the smartphone is often where people are using voice search every day, and whether it be iOS or Android, these devices now have voice control at their core, as well as apps that are voice control. And then the big picture on the right is actually a screenshot from Apple's CarPlay. Google has the equivalent Android Auto. And these are now evolutions of a combination of your phone's technology being used with the car's technology. And some interesting things there. Probably, though, the most diverse set of devices is your laptops and your desktops. And a lot of people don't realize that there is voice control built in now to the operating systems from Microsoft, Apple, and from Google. So all of these desktop and laptop machines can do voice search, and they have a degree of voice control as well. And regardless of your OS, Google have actually chosen to make their browser Chrome support voice search too. So you can use the Google Assistant through the Chrome browser regardless of what computer you use. Then there's what we would call dumb devices. So the dumb voice control devices, these are, there's a screenshot here of a car which has voice control, but it's only controlling very limited functionality. So you can call up numbers on the phone, but you don't have something like CarPlay or Android Auto. And the toy here, which is the famous Sony robot dog, again, that's voice controlled. Now, we're not talking about these devices being used for search, but the importance of devices which are dumb but controlled by voice is that it gets people used to controlling technology by just speaking, and the more that people speak to use technology, the more they're likely to use search in a voice format. The car thing is particularly interesting at the moment. You've now got companies like Jaguar Land Rover and Seat. They're putting Alexa technology actually directly into their cars. And if you think about where car technology is going in relation to autonomous vehicles, if you're not going to be driving your car to work, but you're just going to be sitting there while the car drives itself, what can you be doing instead? Well, you can be searching. You can be searching for what you want to do that day, products you want to buy, maybe your Christmas presents. So perhaps that's why Google is quite so interested in creating autonomous cars. So the use of voice search, this is data from 2016, and the most common reason to use voice search is effectively multitasking, and we live in a very much a multitasking world. So you could be cooking, you could be driving, you could be eating, and you could just speak out loud and perform a search and do things with these devices. So it's really very convenient for you. There's also the next highest one, which, you know, at 30% is still a big driver, is faster results. Now this is really interesting in terms of faster results, because there is a bit of a lag when you when you speak a search and then it has to come back to you. But the difference with voice searches, when it's done over audio and type searches, is often the voice search is jumping straight to the first result. It bypasses the search results page. So people aren't having to choose something to dig deeper into. And we're going to talk a bit more about disintermediation later, but it also relates to the fifth reason, which is the avoiding menus. People have choice overload these days, and so they want to get straight to the point. So faster results, avoiding menus, you know, it's convenient. There's also difficulty on typing on certain devices. Many of us may have experienced that. But it all comes back to convenience. Why people are using it is about convenience, because it's easier to speak than it is to type. We can actually speak around 150 words per minute, but we can only type 40 words per minute. So people use voice search now because it's better for them. Now, with products such as Alexa and Google Home being very much home focused, it's clear that they're fulfilling a need, and the data shows that. But I think it's interesting that people are using search so much in the car and on the go. This is where people are on the move, they need answers quickly, they might need an address, or they might need the nearest place to get a coffee. And these searches are what we would term the local searches. They're geographically specific. People are asking questions relating to their geographical area to where they are at the moment. So this is a big driver. And the really surprising one for me is really the work, only being used 3% in the workplace, voice search. And I think that's probably about people being self-conscious, saying, "Hey Siri," at the desk. You might have a few of your colleagues sniggering at you, thinking, you know, why are you speaking out loud? But I think as people change and lose that inhibition, the work take-up will be really rapid. And the growth of voice search has been really dramatic. As already mentioned, the Amazon Echo with Alexa has only been around for about 3 years. So we've got some 2016 data because that's the last full year that we've got. And what we know is there were 133 million users of Microsoft Cortana's digital assistant, which is a massive number given that that's actually used a lot on desktop. Google released the fact that 20% of all of its mobile device and its app searches were done using voice. And you know, as the biggest player in search, that's a huge number there that that people are using for voice search. And that all adds up to an estimated 50 billion voice searches per month in 2016. A vast number, I mean, really huge. And so that was the 2016 numbers in terms of the use. And then the actual device growth has also been as dramatic, if maybe not more so. So there were 12 million voice-first devices at the end of 2016. So these are the ones with just an audio interface. And the estimates were made at the end of that year for the end of this year. People were saying, well, we think that that's going to triple. It's going to be, you know, around about 33 million voice-first devices. But actually, the data now says that it estimates there's going to be more than 40 million voice-first devices by the end of 2017. And in fact, there is some people talking about that number being far, far greater because the technology companies are keeping exact numbers of products shipped quite close to their chests. But one number we do have is about Amazon's Prime Day on 11th of July this year. So I don't know if anybody out there bought an Amazon Echo on Prime Day on the 11th of July when there was a really big discount to do so. Well, if you did buy one, you're not alone. Amazon sold a whopping 3.3 million Echo devices in a single day, which is just incredible if you think about it. So we've got all of these devices out there, they're being used more and more, and the growth seems to be very much exponential on this. We need to think about the challenges for marketing. So we've got a quick poll here on the software. So if you just want to jot down whether you're involved in marketing, or if you're still a student, whether you want to be in marketing when you graduate. So just be a good idea to get a feel for those kind of numbers. So the challenges for marketing, and it starts with the importance of being found. Even now, 64% of all website visits start at a search engine. So if you want your business, your product, your service to be found by someone who's looking for what you do, people are using search engines to do that. So if people are using voice search to access those search engines, you need to pay attention to it as a marketeer to ensure that you're actually engaging with your audience on the right platform. So we've seen growth in voice search and how it's going to impact what we call search engine optimization, SEO. Many of you, I'm sure, are really familiar with SEO and search engine optimization. The next section is going to explain a bit more about the impact of voice search on marketing. So if we look at the challenges that these voice searches give us, what we've got is no screen for results. That's a pretty big challenge from what we've been used to. There's also much longer search queries, and there's much more in the way of question-based search phrases. The AI are retaining context of previous searches, so how does that affect us and how does that affect our marketing? And there's more likely to be local and mobile searches on voice than other types of searches. And there's the challenge of misspelling and mispronunciation. That is a significant thing, especially given the number of languages that voice search is now being rolled out over. And then something which is a challenge not simply for marketing, but actually for businesses as a whole, which is the disintermediation of the marketplace. So what we'll do is we'll dig a little bit deeper into each of those challenges now. So the no screen for results. We used to optimize for being, on the first page of Google if we can. So what is it now? Well, if you're second on the second result and Alexa only reads out the number 1 result, you're actually just the first loser. And is there any point being second rather than 22nd? Because if only 1 result is being read out, you're not getting any traffic, any exposure. So being second really, really sucks now. The other thing is that there is a structured snippet being read out in many cases, and that is really important if you want to engage with people over voice. So what is the structured snippet? Well, here's an example of one from Red Paddle Co, which is one of our clients, and the structured snippet is the area in the box that you can see at the top of the page. It's got an image in there, it's got a reference as well to the exact URL. And this structured snippet is in response to what to wear paddleboarding in winter. And this is obviously the screenshot of what happens when you type that in. But if you were to do the same search with voice, Google would simply read out that structured snippet that you see there, that if you plan to go for a recreational paddleboard, etc., it will read that out to you. It will reference where it came from. But if you're a marketeer and there are searches that you want your business, your company to appear for, which has a structured snippet, you need to own that structured snippet. Otherwise, you're not going to get the exposure and your competitors are going to get that. So the next challenge is the longer search queries and question-based search phrases. So search engine optimization, it used to be about optimizing for phrases. We'd select a few keyword phrases that your target audience was searching for, and we'd optimize for these, as you knew that if you ranked highly for the phrases, you'd get traffic and you'd inevitably get sales. However, with voice, people are now talking to and putting much more detail into their queries. So you can't simply optimize for phrases anymore. You now need to start thinking about optimizing for content themes. And that's really important when it comes to your strategy. It's also about answering questions. People search for questions and they want answers to those questions. So does your content on your website actually work in terms of answering those questions? And the AI is actually looking to fulfill user needs. It's trying to preempt what the user needs and deliver results on that basis. So you need to think about your content in the context of what your users need. So if so many of your potential customers are using questions, how do you find out what questions your audience are looking for? before we get onto these two graphics, there's really simple ways that you can start thinking about what the questions are that you should be talking about. So you could talk to your customer service teams and you could say, hey, well, what are the questions that our customers ask us every day? You could also look at your frequently asked questions. You know, could you expand upon those frequently asked questions and write more content around those? What are the most popular pages on your website? Those are all things that you can do quickly and simply. You could even actually just talk to your audience and talk to your customers. You could just ask them, you know, what are you looking for? What are the questions that you look for? So you can do all of that, and then if you want to expand your reach, or if you don't have many customers as a new business and you want to engage more customers, or you want to engage different types of customers, you can use online tools like Google's Keyword Planner, or as the example that we've got on the screen here it comes from, you can use a tool called Answer the Public. And here you just type in a subject area, and then the tool will return to you lots of questions that people search online for answers to. And as you can see with the right-hand graphic, this is just on the term paddleboarding. There's plenty of things that, if you're a website owner who wants to talk about paddleboarding, there's plenty of things that you can start talking about. So the next challenge is retain context of previous search. This is where it's got benefits and downtimes. One of the things that you should always realize is that most people are logged in when they're searching. Even if they don't realize, they've typically logged into their app or their device. And so their long-term search history and the history of all of the sites that they're visiting is being taken into account with the search results that they get. So the results that I would get as an individual for one search will be different to the results that you get when you type exactly the same words in, or you speak exactly the same words. And the AI is wanting to be helpful, so it's now learning from the individual. The other thing is the AI is giving the searches context, and this has been probably the biggest fundamental change in making voice search much more useful. So if we take an example of asking Google Assistant, what's the weather in Barcelona in February? It will then tell us what the weather in Barcelona is typically in February. After we've heard that, you could say to Google Assistant, how much are flights? And just from that simple phrase, how much are flights, it's going to return to you results for the flights and the cost of those flights from to Barcelona from your nearest airport based on the data as to your current location, and it will be the information for February. And it's done that because it's retained what you asked in the previous question. And this is what is making voice search and voice search and voice assistants much more useful, because it makes them much more human. It makes the interactions human, because humans, you know, in a conversation, retain the information that's already gone before it. And this is what's making them very smart. So if, as a marketeer, we're going to be working with voice search, we need to now understand how this AI is connecting this information in order to deliver the results. And this is really important, because if we understand how the AI is connecting information, we can help it make those connections and benefit our own businesses. So structured data is the way that it actually connects and gives meaning to information. So what is schema.org? Well, it's the standard, it's the syntax that everybody is now working to mark up content on your web pages, so that search engines can understand what it is that you're saying on the page. So rather than simply just typing a phone number onto the page, you show the phone number visibly, but you actually incorporate that phone number in some specific text. And the search engines and then the AI can understand that. So here's an example which tells us here, for an organization, the Unlimited Ball Bearings Corp, it gives us the website for that company, but it also tells us that the phone number is the phone number for the customer service line. So if we were to do a voice search and we were going to ask Siri, or we were going to ask Google Assistant, you know, what's the customer service number for Unlimited Ball Bearings Corp? It can utilize the data shown on this page, marked up in this way, to actually answer that question for the searcher. And this is really important when it comes to delivering information that voice search can utilize. So, mobile and local searches. Well, we've seen the data, and it's no surprise that lots of voice searches are in relation to location, because people are doing them in the cars and on the move. So these local searches like find a coffee shop near me or where can I buy flowers, people aren't looking around their environment, they're simply turning to search to find things faster. So we need to be there to make sure that they find our businesses as well. And if they're in the car and on the go, and you're driving and you want to go and get that coffee, if you do a voice search with Siri and you've got Apple CarPlay, you can get the answer, and then the directions can be programmed immediately into the car, and you can start following those directions straight away to go and get your coffee. So we need to think about how that's going to affect our businesses. A really interesting one actually now is the data that's showing that people are self-helping in stores using mobile searches. So they're choosing not to talk to shop assistants. They're in the aisles of a store, they're looking at product, and they're deciding not to go and ask a human being. They're asking Google, they're asking Bing, they're asking Siri, you know, tell me about this product, tell me where I can maybe find it cheaper, or tell me what the reviews are about this product. And so businesses need to be aware of this, and they need to think about how they're going to make sure that people still want to shop in their stores and buy their products. So the local search data, and we've seen this from Google Maps and Bing Maps, this local data is being fed from Google My Business and Bing Places for Business. Now, if you want to be found when somebody asks a Google device, find me a place to get a coffee, you need to make sure that your Google My Business entity is up to date, it's claimed by you, it's got all of the information in it. If somebody does a voice search and says, tell me when my local Sainsbury's shuts tonight, if Sainsbury's haven't claimed their Google My Business page and updated the opening times, the search isn't going to be able to deliver any results, and the person might go somewhere else. So that's important. But also, if you're thinking about non-branded searches like where can I buy flowers for my wife, then if you don't optimize your Google My Business or your Bing Places for Business pages, some other company's result will get read out first. So what that means as marketeers, we actually need to start search engine optimizing our My Business and Places for Business pages. We need to start adding content to them, linking to them, getting them seen by the search engines as the better option to send people to, because it's a competitive market. So we're not now just SEOing our own websites, we're SEOing other parts of our digital footprint. Possibly my favorite challenge for marketing is misspelling and mispronunciation. And you can see from the graph here that accuracy rates back in 2013 were less than 80%, but we've now got them nearly 95% in less than 4 years. However, it's still not 100% accuracy, and there are areas where voice search can still struggle. So if you can, choose your brand names carefully and your product names carefully. Now, often, we can't just change the name of our company or the name of our product, but if you are thinking of naming a new business or a product, you need to consider voice search. Try searching for Yves Saint Laurent handbags with a voice assistant, and you'll see what I mean about brand names that don't work very well on voice search. There's also the need to try and eliminate mispronunciation to make sure that you get found, and also that the users find the information that they're really looking for. If you want to do an example of when search engines don't quite hear you right. You might want to ask Cortana about Jason Bourne films, but I would recommend that you don't do that in a busy office. So, disintermediation, probably one of the most fundamental changes in the whole marketplace, rather than just something for marketeers to consider when it comes to voice search and what's going on in the digital landscape at the moment. So if we take the first one, Google's now giving us direct results with that structured snippet. So I do a voice search and I ask it about what to wear paddleboarding in winter. Although it does read out my client's URL at the end of it to say where the information came from, the person hasn't had to go to that website and experience that brand and see the fantastic products that it's actually got. Google's disintermediating the information, the knowledge, if you like, and so it's retaining the attention of that searcher on the Google platform. So there's a challenge there that we need to think about. And it's not just knowledge, it's also products. My favorite example is the Domino's pizza factor. So if you ask Amazon's Alexa for a pepperoni pizza, it would just go and order it from Domino's, which is great. From convenience, I don't need to, tell Alexa which company I want to buy it from and faff around creating accounts and that kind of thing. It will just do it all from Domino's, and it will take the payment and it will be delivered. Now that is really convenient, but at the same time it's reducing customer choice. And if you think about it from a market perspective, here you can start seeing monopolies develop, because if you are the chosen supplier for a chosen product on a platform, you're going to get 100% of the traffic suddenly. And that is something worth fighting for. So what's going to happen down the line if Papa John says to Amazon, actually, we'll pay you X million if you get everybody to order the pizzas from us and not from Domino's? So what's going to happen in the marketplaces as voice becomes more and more prevalent and these things happen? And extending that further is the Alexa and Amazon whole thing. So let's think Amazon's grown from being a bookstore. So a bookstore in Seattle starts selling an awful lot of books and starts selling an awful lot of other things. And now it just wants to sell everything. Why is it invested countless billions in Alexa and Echo? What's the strategy there? Well, if you've got an Alexa in your house and you've got Amazon Prime and you've also got one-click purchase, you can stand there and you go, oh, hey Alexa, order me some more coffee because you've run out, or order me a 50-inch flat screen TV. It will do that, and it's super convenient. So if Amazon owns that convenient retail channel, it becomes the de facto place that people shop. It gets more and more control of the market. And so this is really important. If you're a small business and you're trying to penetrate a marketplace, how can you do that? How can you actually get traction? How can you get traffic in the scenario where people are buying through voice search? And that comes down to the elimination of the supply chain. So back before the internet, if you like, a manufacturer would typically sell to a country distributor, and then that country distributor would sell to one or more wholesalers, and then those wholesalers would sell to different retailers, and that was your supply chain. Well, if you're a manufacturer now, why would you do that? Why would you give margin to the distributor, the wholesaler, and then the retailer? You could just sell it straight from your own website. As the manufacturer, you could ship anywhere in the globe, and you don't then need to give a cut to any of those people. Or if you don't want to have to sell it on your own website, or you realise that Amazon and Alexa are dominating selling, you might just choose to ship the products to Amazon, and Amazon will deal with the selling of those products for you. So you've completely eliminated wholesalers and distributors and retailers from the whole equation. So that's a really, really fundamental change, and something that businesses need to think about in terms of How are we going to deliver value to customers? How are we going to maintain our position? What are we going to do in terms of making sure that we still have a business model that works? So, it's not all doom and gloom, and we've got to remember that voice search is just part of digital. So don't think of voice search as your main focus. It's actually just a part of overall searches. Yes, it's important, but it's just a proportion. And the other thing is type search is not decreasing. So I've heard about people turning their entire focus to voice search because of its growth. But you don't want to leave behind type search because that's not decreasing. So this is still hugely important. And that means that voice search is an additional area of search volume that you can engage with as a marketeer. So start thinking about it like that. And you should still be thinking about SEO best practice as a whole. So if you're following the methods to improve your website for voice search, you should be in line with overall SEO best practices, which is having things like really great unique content on your site, using structured markup, having really well constructed code, and having people linking to your site because what's on there is really great. So where is voice search going? And you might still be thinking, well, is voice search really relevant to my business or to my future? So here's just 3 things to think about. First of all, ComScore think that 50% of all searches are going to be done by voice by 2020. And that's an amazing statistic. Half of searches, half of total searches by voice, just 3 years' time. There's also what we talked about with Domino's and with Amazon's Alexa. We're looking at voice going direct to transaction. That is something which is really important and something that businesses need to think about now. And if we're thinking about transactions, we need to be thinking about maybe authentication, because how are we going to pay for something if we can't authenticate? Now, some of you might have noticed that during this year, and it was much earlier this year, HSBC ran a TV campaign saying about how they can use your own voice to authenticate you. Now, it didn't really get that much notice, but if you think about using your voice to authenticate you, this opens up a world of possibilities where speaking is just your password. You can start buying things online now without the need for a screen. You can just do it all by voice. So these are absolutely incredible changes in the marketplace that we're going to be seeing, and not in decades to come, but in the very, very near future. So I hope you've learned something from what I've said today. We've got some time for some questions. Also, there's some further resources on the screen there. There's some blogs from the Innovation Visual website. There's also a YouTube video of a couple of the guys from Google who did a talk at our recent office opening party about voice search, so that's on there as well. And there's also my social links there as well if you want to connect with me, with the Innovation Visual Business on social media, LinkedIn and Twitter. So we've got some time for some questions, and I know that this will be also made available afterwards, so you can jot those things down at your own leisure. But let's go to questions now and see whether you've got any questions.
Hello, it's me, Laura, again. Hi, Tim. Thank you so much for that. That was really, really interesting. Please do, attendees, if you do have any questions, please do type them into the sidebar now. There was one question that came through slightly earlier with reference to Cortana. And I think there's a couple of slides into the presentation you mentioned about, I think it was 133 million Cortana users. Do we know if those are one-time users or habitual users? With kind of quite a lot of figures and things floating around, particularly with new technologies like this, I imagine having quite specific sort of reference points is quite useful. So, so that was a question from Marcus on Cortana.
Okay, Marcus. So they're not giving the game away. To be perfectly honest, so they're not saying that they're regular ones, they're not saying that they're one-off ones, they're just floating some numbers out there, but they're keeping numbers close to their chest. I think the interesting one in terms of keeping numbers very close to their chest, and sorry, I can't give you a more definitive answer from Cortana, is Amazon and the shipping of Echo, because Amazon are only saying that they've shipped tens of millions. I had a conversation with somebody whose name I can't mention, but is well connected in the tech world. And there are rumours that people think that Amazon may have shipped actually close to 100 million units in total by the end of this year, which is just a breathtaking figure. And, you know, I can't validate that. It's something that somebody has heard in discussions in Silicon Valley. But none of the companies want to give away the specifics of how much traction they've got in the market, because it is very much an arms race of getting as many people on their platforms as they can, as quickly as they can.
Fantastic. So Marcus says thank you. He agrees. The Amazon numbers. Oh, sorry, more questions coming in. Seem more impactful. Big numbers just sound like a wild claim. So going over to Andrew's question, he says, do you think voice search in the office environment will catch on?
Interesting one, because there was Web Design by Sigma also tweeted saying that they didn't think that anybody was going to, or there was going to be major take-up in the office because of disturbing and concentration issues. I think it very much depends on the office and the type of business that you're thinking about. So one of our clients is a tech company, and almost everybody there wears headsets with headphones, and they're talking on Skype for Business. They're having conversations with their offices in Australia and the US, and I've heard those guys do voice searches because it's no different to them talking to a colleague on the other side of the world, or even on the other side of the office, but using the headphones. So I think it depends on the office environment. But people, I think, are going to be, they're shy at the moment in terms of doing those searches. But I think people will turn around more and more and start using voice. Certainly in our office, a lot of us are using headphones all of the time, whether it be that we're listening to music, or again, we're having Skype conversations with people and we're using headphones. I think talking and doing voice searches there, in those environments, that's certainly going to happen more and more. And I do see growth happening.
Fantastic. So another question coming in. Andrew says thank you as well. What impact does voice search have on social media content, for example, with captions? That's a question coming in from Peter.
That is a very good question. So captions, I do not know the specific answer of that, I'll be perfectly honest, because you have to think about, if you're getting things read out, what is it that they're choosing to read out? Are you choosing to get your Facebook feed or something translated into audio? It's unlikely. I don't know how captions will be affecting actual search results. At the moment, you do not tend to see social media posts or social media content in the structured snippets and therefore being read out. So I think that social and audio for social is an entirely different thing.
Okay, just going back to snippets, a question from Ross regarding the impact on analytics and traffic. So if voice assistants are reading out structured snippets without sending users to websites, will we be able to see how many times our results are appearing in voice search? What kind of information does Google Analytics provide in terms of that process?
That's an excellent question, and I can actually answer this one as well. So, yes, the observation is correct that if Google reads out the structured snippet and it's come from your site, it's not going to register in Google Analytics at all because the person hasn't been to your site. However, all is not lost in terms of capturing that data, because that data will be recorded in Google Search Console as an impression that is triggered on the site from basically somebody searching it. It will show as an impression. Now, the grey area is that Google Search Console shows impressions and it shows clicks. And Google are not saying whether the reading out of that snippet is being incorporated into that click data. So is it effectively saying that having it read out is almost the equivalent of a click? So it's not actually declaring one way or another on that. But certainly the number of times that your site appears in terms of that structured snippet will be captured, but in aggregate with the rest of your overall impressions in Google Search Console.
Fantastic. I think that this might be potentially the last question from Mohammed. Do you think there might be a negative side to using voice search, especially when it comes to voice recognition and authentication? Now, you mentioned bank accounts earlier. For example, if someone can record my voice, wouldn't they, in theory, be able to use it to hack into various accounts?
I'm absolutely with Mohammed on that. I think that there is a huge potential security risk involved with just using voice. However, it could be used as an additional authentication factor. And if you think about how you authenticate with certain of your accounts, we use two-factor authentication on things like our bank accounts and on our Google account here and things like that. So it could be that you could authenticate with your voice, but then the system would send your mobile phone a number that you would then read out. So in that way, you bypass the issue of somebody has recorded your voice because they also don't possess your phone. If they've stolen your phone and they can unlock it and they've recorded your voice, then yeah, you're probably stuffed. But that one is an unlikely scenario. But I think that there's a lot of issues around security anyway on the internet, and people do have to keep very vigilant as to protect themselves.
Fantastic. I think we've got time for one more question, which is from Stephen. When creating questions and answers in an FAQ format on a website, is it enough to use the kind of question property from schema.org, or are there additional requirements that need to be considered?
I would suggest that you could just use that property at this point, but it depends what you want to be found for as well, because do you want to define certain elements as well? Do you want to use some definitions within the answer to the question? So you could say this is the question, but you may want to consider whether you're going to use elements of schema.org in your answer as well to make that even more structured and make that even clearer to the engine so that they can pick that up. So it would very much depend on what you're doing there. The other thing I would say on the FAQs is that it's great to have an FAQs page on your site that is aggregated, so it's very good for usability. But it's also good to have longer form answers and have individual pages for your FAQ. So if you've got something which takes a bit more of an answer or is a big subject that lots of people are asking for, create a separate page for it, use the question in the meta title, use the question in the H1, use the schema markup around it, and you will find you'll get much more traction on a page which is a standalone page for that question and answer than you'll get if that question is just one of 15 or 20 on the same page. So that would be my recommendation.
Fantastic, thank you. Just before we sort of head towards the end of the session today in the last few minutes, I thought I'd just bring us back to the poll questions and some of the results from those, which I will also send out in further detail to all participants. So our first question, on which devices have we previously used voice search? 75% of you said that you've used it on a smartphone, 42% in the car, 42% on laptop, 4% on voice first devices, and 25% have never used voice search. And with our second poll question, are you involved in marketing? A quarter of our participants today have a marketing-centric job. 38% of those participants, their job involves marketing in some way. 17% it has nothing to do with marketing. 21% of our audience today are students and hope to go into marketing in the future. However, I will send all of those statistics around when I send out the recording within the next few days. But thank you very much, Tim. That was really interesting. Lots of really great information and detail and really interesting questions. If anyone does have any further questions or comments, when I do send out the recording, I will include all the links to Innovation Visuals channels in addition to my email address, and you can get in contact with us. Thank you everyone for attending today. As I say, if you do have any questions or comments, do get in touch with either of us. If there's a particular topic that you would like us to feature in our webinar program, please do get in touch. We're very open to suggestions. Equally, if you're a bit like Tim and you're a bit of an expert in your particular field and you have a really keen interest that you're hoping to share with other people, please do get in touch. We're always interested in those who wish to share their knowledge and insight with our alumni and students across the globe. So on behalf of the University of Liverpool and our presenter, thank you very much for joining us today. Enjoy the rest of your day and the soon-to-be weekend, and we will send you a link to this recording within the next few days. So thank you very much, everyone, and thank you very much to Tim as well.
Thank you.
See you all soon. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.